as I go into the latter half of my life, I didn't want to, again, have good cardio or, be fit. I wanted to be strong. And
Hmm.
the only thing that gets you strong is lifting heavy weights.
On today's podcast, we have Andy Rutledge. Andy is a new friend. He's just joined the company to help us with some creative work. So Andy is a copywriter. I was interested in Andy's work as a copywriter because he's kind of our main target demo here, and he was a starting strength guy before he joined us, which is why him working with us appealed to me. He's a designer. He works on websites, apps, does a bunch of stuff in the creative field, and he's an interesting character. And he's quite judgmental of my eating habits. I should tell you guys, because he was talking some shit when I was bringing my own food through the airport, because I've been copying Stan Efferding. And you know what, Andy, I enjoy it, man. It's cheaper and it's better. But before you respond to that, I bring it up because I wanted to let you know that I'm actually drinking about 30 ounces of skim milk, not full fat, skim milk, Fairlife, with, I hope Ripito doesn't watch this, 2 shots of decaf espresso.
Are you even doing the program?
Well, no, actually, I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah, I've done the program. Now I'm doing some variation for people that have too many orthopedic injuries. So loosely is the answer. Andy, let's start with your story. So the thing that's most interesting about you to me, other than your skills at work, is the fact that you've added what, 55 pounds of body weight in your 50s. So let's just get that out of the way right away,
That's
because
about right.
I've been in the trenches battling the trolls on YouTube, these fucking 22-year-old boys that don't understand anything about anything, that have the most firm opinions of any group of people in the world, and lift weights but don't actually understand how body weight works and how body composition works. So Andy, tell us about your weight gain situation, your numbers, your overall story, if you don't mind.
Okay. Thanks for having me on, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I hope this is fun. I think it's going to be fun. So yeah, I as you can see, I'm an elderly chap. So at 54, I didn't like where my body was going, and I've been an athlete most of my life. Soccer and karate and cycling and running and whatever. But I didn't like what I was seeing in the mirror, and I was starting to, you know, to to head into the latter part of life. And so I thought, lifting is what I should do, and so started that. And started at crummy. I had the 1 inch bar, the concrete filled plastic plates, that kind of stuff, and very quickly realized, first of all, you can't put enough weight on the bar to do a lot of stuff. Very quickly you run out of weight. So that was 2020, before COVID really shut down availability on gym equipment and stuff like that. So I got ahead of that, I think. But got an Olympic bar, started getting some plates, and started lifting for real. And I started a program that is similar to Starting Strength, but doesn't have the whole sort of oomph behind it. All the science and the experience and the sort of the comprehensive approach behind it.
And the
But there
detailed
was this
programming,
pink
I'm
man.
guessing.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and I'm talking about like a novice progression.
sure. Yep.
It did have 5 pounds per workout,
Mm-hmm.
and so I started doing that. But there was, like I said, there was this pink man on YouTube that was making a lot of sense, and and so and the folks that were around him seemed to be making a lot of sense. I think this is before you kind of had a really good sort of video media approach. And so I started consuming all that. And one of the things that continually came up was eating. And I realized, I'm not doing that, at least the way they're talking about. What they're talking about sounds outlandish, but it made sense to me. So I just started doing it. Greatly increase. I never thought about what portion of my meals were protein and carbs and whatever. So I essentially just upped the protein and started a bit and started gaining weight. And of course, at the beginning, I'm thinking, okay, I'm gaining weight. Am I just starting to get fat? Am I putting on muscle? Because at first you don't really notice a lot of stuff. But then a buddy of mine at lunch once looked at me and he said, your traps are huge. What happened? Because I was literally this beanpole that was starting to get a bit of a little pot belly. And so things started changing. And so I kept, yeah, I mean, that was inspiring. So I just kept eating and kept lifting. And a couple of years later, now I have to turn sideways to get through a doorway, shoulders are just too wide. So.
Beanpole. Yeah. And that's the, for all you old dogs listening, that's your trajectory if you're not lifting. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably lifting, but ultimately, if you're a thin guy and you're aging and you don't put your body through the process of getting stronger, then it will get weaker because there's no static state in nature. You're either improving or declining. And so muscular atrophy will find you and it'll start chipping away at you. And you can continue to keep your calories in check to avoid the pot belly, but if you're not as disciplined as that about that as you would like to be, and you end up prioritizing the joy from food over your svelte beanpole stature, then the pot belly is going to come. And so you'll be weak, you'll be skinny, and you'll be skinny fat at that. And that is not a good trajectory. So I've got a couple follow-ups for you, Andy, but first hit us with your height and body weight, starting body weight and current body weight.
Okay, so I'm 5'10" and started at around 170, 175 probably. Yeah, 175, and now I'm 230.
Nice.
And
for those listening, Andy just looks like
that
a
whole
tub of lard. I mean, just he's hiding his multiple chins under his beard. He can hardly breathe.
Exactly. And seriously, I didn't do anything special. I didn't get on this sort of having to weigh everything and measure everything and keep track of things in a book or whatever. I looked at how many grams of protein I need and how many calories I need, and I kind of figured that out with some meal prep and some other stuff. But I just ate and lifted, and everything changed. I seriously, there are times still that I walk by a mirror and I'm like, it's startling. It's like that's not the guy that I've ever known in my whole life.
Yep. The reason I invited you on the podcast, the idea sprung from, I forget who it was. Someone, it might have been on the forum, just reminded me that they love seeing the stories from older guys. They love seeing the possibilities. And I mean, I think it's amazing that the program could take a, mid, late 20s guy like me and add 80 pounds of useful body weight onto my frame and totally change the trajectory of my life in every sense. But, I'm young, and that's not that surprising that would work, but it's great. The fact that it works for a guy in his 50s and you can go from 175 to 230 body weight and not keel over from a heart attack like everyone might expect, or be this sloppy mess of a human. This is not common knowledge. This is not common knowledge.
No.
It's not even necessarily common knowledge amongst the community. And I got to tell you that when I'm coaching people in their 50s plus, I'm very cautious about the pace of the weight gain, because if I were to take a guy from 170 to 230, I'd want to make sure that it's primarily lean body mass. And for a guy that's older, the testosterone situation is usually compromised, and that means you got to be slow and steady, slower than you would otherwise, right? So,
right.
Awesome, man. Well done. What were your PRs so far? What are your PRs?
Goodness. This is part of it sounds good to me, and part of it is really ridiculously awful. My best squat single is 440.
Hell yeah.
Uh, Deadlift
At what age, real quick? Sorry.
405. 57.
So 57 years old
440 at 57.
from a skinny
Yeah.
cyclist
When I started,
to squatting 440.
yeah. Yeah, when I started, I think when you're uneducated about things and you got the enthusiasm about starting something, you try stuff.
Yeah.
And so I tried, I think the max squat that I was able to do was 160 for a single.
Right, right, right. Do, do you guys understand what that means? What that does to a guy in his 50s who goes from 170-pound squat to 440 pounds and goes from 170-pound body weight to 230 useful pounds. Explain to us what that's done for you, Andy. Sorry, after you finish the rest of your PRs, explain to us what that's done for you.
Okay. Yeah, so what I do, squatting and deadlift and bench, I said I've been an athlete all my life. All of it's been lower body stuff. Never once did anything with arms or chest or back or anything. So my best bench is 200 even.
For a single?
And yeah, no, yeah, I think that was for a single. And again, I was trying something because I think I was working out at about 180, 185, something like that, doing reps. But then press 140.
Be as detailed as you'd like. I want to know everything, because for me, starting strength has changed my. Yeah, I've said this before, but I wouldn't be with my wife, which means I wouldn't be here in Idaho. I wouldn't have my daughter. I wouldn't have my job. I probably never would have competed in a fight, which has been a lifelong goal of mine. I mean, just everything about my presence, my capability, my day-to-day interaction with others and my environment, everything has radically changed for the better, which is why I'm doing things like this podcast to try to tell other people about this. What has been your experience?
Well, I think the first thing is that, what does that do to a person to make that transformation? I I don't know what I wouldn't have right now. Like I think you have some pretty clear cut ideas of those things, but my my outlook on sort of my place in the world, my out, how I move through my day, how I interact with other people, all of that has changed significantly because of the confidence and the I don't know, heck, the vigor and the, as we old folks say, the pep uh, of of knowing what you can do. When you've got 400 and X pounds on your back, and that fourth rep was a kind of a grinder, and you don't rack it, you go down and you come back up out of the out of the bottom on the next rep, and you make it, and then you do that the next week as well. You teach yourself things about you that that just extend so far beyond anything that has to do with athletics or exercise or lifting or anything. So, and then like I mentioned before, I'll pass a mirror today, and it's startling to see that that's the guy, because I lived 54 years, probably 55 years of my life, knowing a completely different, guy in the mirror.
Yeah.
And suddenly I looked like, someone that maybe, I aspired to be when I was a young man, and
Yeah.
it never worked out because I never put in the work.
Right.
And boom, in a couple of years, I've got that in. I don't have any physical limitations. It's not like I was, had a cane before or had trouble going upstairs or whatever, but like, I haven't changed my activity level from my 20s. And I expected that once you hit, your mid 50s, everything starts to decline a little bit. It hasn't declined at all. It's gotten better.
Nice. So better than 20s or better than it's been recently?
Oh, well, I mean, better, no, better than 20s. Just, I don't know. I'm super active. Like I don't like to sit for long periods of time. Like talking to you here for a while is going to be a chore because I can't get up and go do something. It's that level of energy. But anything that I could do in my 20s, I can do now. And I don't know if I could, do that if I hadn't started this.
Hmm. Compare for me the fifth rep on a heavy set with the mental fortitude required to do long distance cycling. And I'm assuming, by the way, that
Mm,
you're doing intense cycling and
mhm.
you're pushing it. So yeah,
Well,
fill me in on that. What style
sure.
you pursued and how that compares.
Right. Well, to start, I'm gonna say I'm no longer a road cyclist.
Hmm.
Now, I did that for a few years. I don't think maybe I could. I don't know if I could do that and do what I'm doing now because I was putting in 10, 12 hours a week on the bike,
Hmm.
a couple hundred miles, and some of the really the workout where some of the rides are just easy, but some of the serious work and hill climbing and stuff like that. There is that like a hill climb, for instance, you can't stop. You don't stop on a ride. You keep moving the pedals, and you can't stop on a climb. You could stop at the top if you want, but you can't stop. Up on a climb. It shouldn't enter your mind. It sucks. In fact, there's a lot about cycling that's suffering. There's a lot of suffering. The pro cyclists mention that sometimes, but and they suffer worse than any of us amateurs. But it's suffering. But you get used to suffering. But I don't know when you got the heavy barbell on your back, you have to first of all decide that you're not going to rack it,
Hmm.
which I mean, I don't really know how this compares to cycling. But I mean, both are tough. But you have to decide. It's a willful act not to rack it, and then it's a willful act to start that descent and to hit depth, and then to not stop. Because if the last rep was tough, you're going to hit a little sticking point.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, I think all of us we have to sort of develop a way to get past that, like create a personal rule. I'm going to give it X seconds. If I keep moving, I'm going to keep pushing, or whatever it is that is the thing that gets you through that. But what matters is that you start that. Now you can either get through it or you can't, because I've laid the bar down several times
Hmm.
on the pins. But you can either get through that or you can't. But you know, most times I think, for me at least, I do. But if I racked it, I wouldn't like myself much the rest of that day.
Hmm. So it's one bout of suffering and putting your pride on the line compared to continuous suffering, but lower intensity on the road. Is that an accurate way to summarize it?
Sure. And it's all repeated because, if I'm on a long, like an 80-mile ride or whatever, there's going to be, hard parts and easier parts. And I'm going to choose to get to those hard parts that are still, an hour and a half away.
Hmm.
But same thing with lifting, if your squat sets were super tough, you've got deadlift waiting for you. And
Hmm.
then you've got 2 days later, you've got, the same thing.
Hmm.
This is going to happen again. And you have to decide, I'm not going to miss that workout. You just do it because it's like brushing your teeth.
Right. Yeah, I look at it the same way, and I try to encourage my trainees and friends and family to do that as well. Um, Lifting weights is part of my job. I will go to the
Yeah.
gym in the middle of a workday and ignore phone calls and get my work done because it has to get done. It is non-optional. Not only is it part of my
Mm,
job, but it is fundamental to my health and my enjoyment of life. And so I don't skip training. I don't skip training. I don't think I missed a single session even when the baby was born because I've been on the
mm,
other side of it and I don't want to get
that's
there.
tough.
And you start making compromises and you start making
Yeah.
excuses and you start pushing stuff off. and then all of a sudden you're missing workouts, and then you're hurting more, and you're getting weaker, and you're declining,
Mm-hmm.
and then lifting isn't part of your schedule. So I feel the same way about it. It is just like anything else that must happen in my life. I must eat, I must sleep,
Mm-hmm.
I must lift. It's non-negotiable. Something you mentioned during the intro of the podcast was that you thought that lifting was something that you should do. Can you expand on that?
Yeah.
What led you to that conclusion?
Oh, in my mind, it was a thing that did what nothing else could. Nothing builds a strong body except lifting.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to have good cardio if I was weak.
Mm.
And especially, I mean, the thing again, I talked to you about looking at myself in the mirror and seeing that bean pole with a pot, a little pot that was starting to form. It was a complete lack of an upper body. I mean, there are no shoulders. They're just flat things that go into these little, spaghetti noodle arms. And I've always found that unappealing. And as I got older, I would notice it in other people, and I'd be like, ugh, oh crap, that's me. And that was disheartening, and
Yeah.
it was disgusting. But I mean, but the main thing was, as I go into the latter half of my life, I didn't want to again have good cardio or be fit. I wanted to be strong,
Mm.
and the only thing that gets you strong is lifting heavy weights.
Mm.
And I mean, I don't know if I'm like a lot of people, but I spent a lot of time online listening to various experts talk about, what you need to do in life, to stay strong. And they all involved weight. But again, there was that pink man that was talking about, yeah, and most of that is BS. It's only when you lift heavyweight, increasingly heavyweight,
Mm-hmm.
and you do it at least, 3 days a week. And you keep adding 5 pounds. You keep adding 5 pounds. Like, okay, that makes some sense, but that seems a little excessive. But
Mm.
I just started. But yeah, lifting. That was the only thing that was going to make me strong.
On one hand, it seems simple and obvious. On the other hand, it does seem extreme and excessive. But you can't fuck with the argument.
No.
Rip's arguments are bulletproof. I mean, I spent a good chunk of my life pulling apart texts and trying to find holes in arguments. That was most of my childhood. And I looked at the Starting Strength book in a similar context. I'm trying to find an error in his thinking, and it's pretty damn bulletproof. And I've said this before, but that on its own is not enough to convince me, because just because it sounds plausible doesn't mean it's true. Right. I'm the type that I'm skeptical until I can verify it myself, or if someone I trust, to the degree that I trust my brother, or like a Nick Delgadillo tells me something, then that's a high degree of belief as well. But luckily, unlike many things in life, this is something you can actually take and apply to yourself and prove it to yourself. So this is science in the truest sense of the word. Ripito had a hypothesis. He developed a theory. He tested his theory in his lab in Wichita Falls over the course of decades. Mm-hmm. He then communicated his theory to his peers, and each of us are peer reviewing his theory. And millions of people have peer reviewed the theory, and that's pretty fascinating. And so when we get into topics that are scientific in nature but not necessarily related to strength training, I believe we have the credibility and the rigor and the background to do so, just based on the fact that we are actually performing science here. Is it funded by the NIH, and is it double-blind, placebo-controlled? Well, that doesn't even make sense. But no, is it published in the New England Journal of Medicine? Well, no. Does that make it any less real? Absolutely not, because as Ripito states, it's the phenomenology. It's the phenomenology. An anecdote, n equals 1, is not data, but a series of anecdotes of n equals a million that all, indicate things like a guy in his 50s going from 175-pound to 230-pound body weight and developing a 440-pound squat. there's causation there. So
Yeah, there is.
for a guy like me that is extremely skeptical and has a very high bar of quantifying something in my brain as factually correct, this is one of the few things that is true. And I talked to Ina Koppel about this a lot. This is one of her favorite aspects of the program. There's so much bullshit in
Yeah,
life. My God, especially in
yeah,
2023.
yeah.
So many narratives, so much nonsense, so much pressure, so much belief. And not to shit on belief in things that you can't prove, but for those of us that appreciate things that are quantifiable and repeatable, this is it.
hmm And when you dig into it, like you've done, like a lot of folks in the starting strength world have done, you f- it's still mind-boggling to me the amount of supporting investigation and testing and results that are documented. Even in the book, like the book that I bought was the Barbell Prescription, and that book starts out. One of the first chapters is the sick aging phenotype, talking about essentially the pathology for probably most Americans, I think. And working in the medical field, I hear about it every day, the sort of the specifics of this stuff and how that informs this process and sort of compels this process. And that's just one aspect, the sort of scientific approach to one particular aspect of human health and how other things affect it and don't affect it. That's the other thing. The pains that Rip and others have taken to dispel some of the horrible conventions that people hold on to related to health, not strength necessarily, but health in general. And it's all supporting material for this program
Mm-hmm.
that is about making stronger, harder to kill human beings.
Yep.
That's you got to respect that.
You got to respect that, and you got to be a little bit concerned that it took a power lifter from Texas to be the one to come up with this insight or innovation, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I'm ashamed of humanity for not having developed this simple, straightforward stress recovery adaptation approach to human physiology.
Mm-hmm.
Um, until Ripito decided to write it down. And it existed, but it was tribal knowledge and it was super niche. I'm talking
Mm-hmm.
about at scale. I'm talking about,
Mm-hmm.
why does your MD not understand this? This is probably if not the most, one of the most fundamental
Yeah.
aspects of health and your existence on Earth. And this guy's going to talk to you all day about lisinopril and a statin, but he's not going to talk to you about linear progression. And I don't know if he ever will, especially since our medical system is so badly corrupted. But I'm glad that we have the insight, and whether we have to take the underground approach to find it and to attain it, or the above board, endorsed by the mainstream approach, it doesn't matter. What matters is what works.
It is. And because it works, I mean, I'm with you. I don't understand why medicine, even one specific discipline of medicine, doesn't isn't devoted to this in some way, doesn't know this at all. Uh, I mean, I get from the barbell sports sort of culture that a lot of folks would avoid this because it's hard, and it takes a kind of curiosity that extends beyond making money on getting people to do your program or whatever. But medicine, it's unforgivable. In fact, I mean, I don't know if I may have expressed to you, but I have contempt for all of at least American medicine. I assume that it's representative of world medicine because it's quackery
It really
and it's
is.
danger. Most of it is
A lot of
dangerous.
it is. I don't know what the
Uh,
percentage is, but a lot of it is certainly dangerous.
I don't.
Killed both my grandparents last month.
Oh man. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah,
Goodness.
they were ready to go. And
Yeah.
that's another shame of our system is that that it has people on polypharmacy and
Yeah.
just bleeding them of every one of their last dollars, with doctor's visits
Right.
and procedures and
Right.
medications, and doing things that no one actually knows what the net effect is of. And so these,
Yeah.
my grandparents were suffering. So the good news is their suffering's over, and our
Mm.
system doesn't have
Yeah.
a way of allowing people to end their suffering. Whether it should or not is a complicated
Hmm.
discussion. But
Sure.
the fact, I won't go into the details, but my grandfather, his death was preventable based on actually both of my grandparents. Their death was, the root cause was prescription of a medication that they had a nasty side effect to.
Ugh. Oh man,
So, and
that's so funny.
I've had to save my mother from probably 4 different situations where a doctor was about to make a mistake with her health, a not fully thought through mistake
Oh
based on
yeah.
protocol. And
Yep.
I see it all the time. I now get to see how the sausage is made with being an EMT. And
Hmm.
I had James Johnson on the podcast, the Salt Lake City guy, and the franchise owner from Salt Lake City. And he, he's been in the healthcare field for a while, and he has had several of these assisted living facilities. And I think his
Mm.
perspective on it is correct. He's a positive guy. He's a religious guy. He's got a
Yeah.
good point of view. There's so many wonderful people trying to do great things in the field, and that should not be discounted. But the fact of the matter is, the bureaucracy has taken over. There's no
Mm, yeah.
accountability. There's no skin in the game. The
No.
incentives are shit, and the way decisions are made are for political purposes and not for health
Yes.
outcomes. And that is
Yes.
the actual state of affairs. Whether you recognize it or not, that is the actual state of affairs. I don't say all
Mm.
this just to shit
And it
on the
didn't start
system,
out that way.
but no, it didn't start out that way. But I do
Right.
say this because I want to reinforce a point that I think is really important. When it comes to your own health, it's your responsibility. When I was growing up,
Yeah.
and I think this is why my
Absolutely.
grandparents are dead, is because I was taught that you can have faith in the system. Doctor knows best. And I think what's happened here, if I had to speculate, is that the profiteers who only care about cash, regardless of negative consequences to others, which is the definition of evil, in my opinion, have
Mhm.
found that there's no better way to sell something than via the priest, via the person that someone goes to with full
Mm.
trust and belief, which is what medical
Yeah.
professionals became over the last several decades. And that trust has been, it's been weaponized, much in the way that
Absolutely.
empathy is weaponized in politics, right? Like you
Hmm.
can be some 20-year-old Berkeley student and like, yeah, Black Lives Matter. Well, no shit, Black Lives Matter. You don't understand what you're
Hmm.
saying though. You're supporting a
Right.
Marxist organization, but they're weaponizing that person's
Hmm.
compassion. And this is
Yep.
I won't go off too far on a tangent here, but this is this is why we can't be trusted as a collective, because we make emotional decisions and
Yeah.
we're too easy to manipulate. But the whole point of that rant is I just want to encourage everyone who's listening or watching to please take control of your own healthcare. You treat medical professionals and any service provider in your life as a consultant. You don't have blind faith in people just because they have a credential. And if you do fall victim to that, there
Hmm.
are consequences. So I'd like to caution
Yeah.
everyone against that.
Yeah. And that's what, and part of what I think the sort of medicinal approach to, well, it's medicine, is to essentially lock you in. It's the same as the pusher on the street. It's to get you in so they can get the hooks in, so that you are your next the next solution to your next problem is going to be another one,
Yep.
and you're going to need a combination. And this combination is bad, so we're going to put you on that combination. And it doesn't become looking at your life holistically. It becomes, well, okay, well, what drug will work?
Yep.
How about no drugs?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't
How
take
about we
any.
find a solution
I
without
take no
drugs?
drugs,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I hope that that lasts. But yeah.
And if anyone is calling bullshit on my claims here, I'll just give you a couple of examples. Okay. If anyone can find a medically sound, scientifically backed reason to treat a late stage COVID patient with remdesivir, which was a standard CDC approved protocol, even after the studies indicated how dangerous it was. If anyone can tell me
Right.
how that makes sense, I will send you $100 and I'll invite you on the podcast for a conversation. And I could name 20 examples just like that to just completely demonstrate the degree of medical corruption. But before I get all pissed off and ruin my day, Andy, let's go back to fun stuff.
Yeah.
So
this was a dark sequence in our chat.
We were talking about the numerical nature of this program and the scientific aspect to it, and real science, not scientism, where it's belief in people that perform science, and therefore you're just part of a new religion. Within that, Andy, we have developed a digital logbook that we have since shown to you and you've become aware of and you are now involved with and working on. Tell me in your words the significance of this data, firstly, and then also I'd like to hear a summary of what you've done to the logbook, the little changes we're working on to kind of make it more engaging and a little more rewarding.
It's interesting because maybe there is such a thing, but I have to wonder if there's any other kind of application out there that is gathering this scope of information, this daily scope of information that is directly tied to a prescription of, a training program, essentially, that is documenting the results. And so, I mean, I don't have any insight into this. I have to believe that that's really powerful to examine, because that's what I understand Starting Strength continually does, is re-examines, the techniques and claims and whatever else. Is it still working? Did it ever work? Whatever, to adapt it, to change it. And there has been change introduced in Starting Strength, I think, from the beginning, as things evolve, as knowledge evolves. And so I have to think that that's a really powerful tool. And I'm excited. Like I said, I don't have great insight into it, but I'm excited about what's going to be done with that. But there are some things that you and I have worked on, and that is essentially giving a lot of the students insight into what they've accomplished. One of the things that we've been working on is giving some kudos when you reach a certain milestone, whether that's a plate milestone or a PR or whatever. So that's about your workout, when the individual has been on the program for X months or X years or whatever. So, and then looking back at how those milestones occurred, when they occurred, and, at what tempo or whatever. But of course, again, the interesting thing about that from the students, from the trainees perspective is, you made that happen. And if you started missing workouts or whatever, it slowed down. There's no way to cheat the system. And so that's clear insight into that as well. I mean, you kind of see that every day. If you still only have one plate and, and then some little ones on there doing this one movement, and it's been 6 months, that's probably on you. Yep. It's on you about that. So you can forge your own PRs. But one funny one, I don't know if you saw, I kind of chuckled when you started mentioning this app. I didn't get in trouble, but I was startled when my coach hit me up and he said, "So you pulled 440 yesterday?" I was like, "What?" And I was putting dummy data into the app so that I could get screenshots, and so I could learn how to use the app. And I left it. And he sent me a photograph from the gym on the standings, and I was at the top.
Oh yeah, because you're technically a member of Starting Strength Katy, aren't you?
Plano.
Oh, is it Plano? Okay, yeah, my bad. I thought you were in the
Plano.
Houston area. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you and I have talked about Katy, so
okay,
anyway,
that's what it is.
So I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry," and so I had to remove that.
Now that your PRs are going to show up on the screen in the gym, maybe you should enter your workouts in there anyways, huh?
I was thinking of that. I didn't know if that was cheating or whatever, or taking gym privilege, whatever. But
if you're paying them for membership, you get access to the logbook and you get to use it if you want to. So
yeah. No, but another, I think, nice thing that I think we've talked about is being able to sort of see where you sit. For
Mm,
people who are your age, your sex, um, where do you fit in the world
mm,
of PRs or whatever,
mm.
or the rate at which you got to this particular milestone. Again, that's interesting stuff, and I think anything that helps fuel the enthusiasm of the folks who are doing this is a good thing, and maybe that's part of it. But the fact that you're able to do that is fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. And just so everyone's aware of the context here, basically what this means is we have a custom application that we built for starting strength gyms. And it's a web app. You don't have to remember your iTunes password to download an app and take up storage on your phone. Just go to a bookmark that you shortcut on your iPhone or your Android. Brings you to a digital logbook that was designed initially by Keith Barney, the guy that did the intro music to this podcast, if you're watching it on YouTube. Really talented designer. And he just made this really simple digital logbook interface where you track all your workouts. And then a bunch of stuff happens once you do that. So first of all, it's stored in a database. So we can see how much progress people make over time on average, median, min, max. We can slice and dice it any way we'd like to. And then in addition to that, it shoots your information up on the screen. So there's two screens in the gym when you walk in. One is the schedule. And so it shows everybody who's joining the next session and what they will be lifting that day. So you walk in, your name's on the board and your lifts are on the board. You go over to your rack, you write down your lifts and your warm-ups, and then you're good to go. And then on the other screen, it lists all of the PRs for the gym. And then the screen rotates and it lists all of the PRs in order for the whole franchise. The dashboard will show that to, it won't just show the top 8 or whatever it is we show. You'll be able to go from one to end. You'll be able to see every single person stack ranked in the gym. You'll be able to filter by how often they train, how long they've been training, filter by gym, filter by sex, filter by lift. You'll be able to compare gyms to each other. You'll be able to compare progress over time. And then the last thing that we have planned for this data at the moment, well, it's not the last thing. We're also doing a study with the University of Chicago. There's a guy in Texas who's at a satellite branch of the university who got some grant funds that he wants to use to play with this data and see how strength affects health outcomes and a bunch of other stuff. You can argue with me all you want, but if I show you case study video after case study video of anecdotal, qualitative results with a quantitative flair, you can't argue much with that. If I can layer on top
No.
a data set of thousands of people that have done this program and the indisputable results they've achieved based on the weight on the bar,
Yeah.
I try to fuck with that.
I'm trying to think of all the other programs or internet stars that are going to jump right on that and be able to offer the same kind of info to folks. It's not going to happen.
Well, and I really, I say this a lot, but I really am waiting for a competitor. The sooner you guys can come, the better. The sooner you can come, the better.
Yeah.
We just got hit
Heck
up
yeah.
by a company whose job it is to take promising young franchisors and layer on their capability and to grow them and sell them to private equity for $100 million. This is their thing. And the guy from that company got in touch with me. They're out of Chicago, and we had a conversation. And he was ready to go, and he's interested. But I told him that I wasn't taking the call because I'm open to that idea. I was taking the
Yeah.
call to see if he thought our idea was as wonderful as I think it is.
Yeah.
and he does. And I also told him I'm willing to help him out because I've got a
Awesome.
buddy that runs a franchise company that
Yeah.
that is looking for an exit.
Uh-huh.
We are not looking for an exit. That is not our goal.
Okay.
But
That's what I figured you were going to say.
yeah. But I cannot wait. I cannot wait for someone to come out with mainstream strength, whatever the name ends up being. It's probably not going to be as pure as our offering, but I hope someone does just barbells and squat racks, and I hope they have a lot of money behind them because they are going to undercut us on price, and they are going to pay their coaches less, and they're still going to make a lot of people better. They're still going to have a net positive impact. But the most important thing
Sure.
they're going to do is they're going to bring a whole bunch of attention to this category. And then when people,
Yep.
let's say you've never heard of Porsche, and you're just getting into cars, and
Yeah.
and you see a Chrysler, you're like, oh, that Chrysler's kind of cool looking, and you're like, oh, looking at the hood, the engineering shit, oh, the maintenance is terrible, the safety's awful. I don't want anything to do with this. What else is out there? Oh shit, there's Porsche. So we're always going to be premium. We're always going to be the better experience. We're always going to
Yeah.
be the high quality people, the engineering rigor, and
Yeah.
the sooner we get a competitor, the better, because we're not going to go downstream ourselves. Someone else is going to have to
Heck
do it.
yeah.
And it's just going to help a lot of people
Mhm.
get stronger, and maybe in not as good of a way as what we do, but bring a whole lot of attention to the category and help us grow.
Absolutely. And I think that, competition is awesome. And, I've met, a lot of the folks on your team. And if you think you're being creative right now, because I mean, you guys are a creative, uppity bunch. But if you think you're that creative and uppity right now, wait till you have a real competitor.
Yeah.
It's just, that's fantastic.
Yep. What's your impression of the team so far? Feel free to say anything positive or negative, because I always talk. I say nothing but great things about our group. I might be slightly biased and have the rose tinted glasses on, but I've said this before.
Yeah.
This team is the best team I've ever worked with in my entire career, including the time when I literally had an unlimited budget and I could import anyone from anywhere in the world to come work with us. This
Hmm.
team out executes those people hands down. And
Yeah.
I hand selected these people too. It's just, and the difference, by the way,
Yeah.
is first principles thinking, the ability to do an analysis, and passion
Yeah.
and buy-in. These are not mercenaries that are hired guns to get a
Right.
job done. These are people that would literally do this for free if they could. Our
Right.
CFO
Well,
is not making what he could make with a bigger client. He's making the amount of money he
yeah.
thinks we can afford based on our current stage, and he's happy to help and spend his time making less money because he thinks what we're doing is so important.
Hmm.
Thank you, Austin, by the
Hmm.
way, if you're listening.
Yeah, no, that's the impression I get, and I think for good reason. I mean, this isn't from what I've gathered, from the few touches that I've had. This is an energetic, passionate bunch of people who, well, I'm making some assumptions here, but I have some insight, and I believe that you guys are kind of flying by the seat of your pants, and you're having to make consequential decisions every week about that are going to have a lot of impact on what you're trying to do, and but everyone kind of has the right idea about what you're trying, the same idea, the right idea, as far as I can tell, about what you're trying to do. And that kind of energy is just, it's infectious. And I think one of the reasons that you dig this team over, when you said you had unlimited budget and unlimited whatever, constraint is the key to excellence. When there are no constraints, anything is possible, and therefore absolutely nothing of consequence can get done.
Mm-hmm.
Constraint is how you get great shit done.
Mm.
And in fact, the more constraint, the better. And
Well,
so
we've
you
been
guys
awfully
are under all
constrained.
kinds of constraints. Yeah.
Yeah, shit.
Yeah. So embrace that, love that,
Yeah.
and make that, that's a love letter to your results.
Any idea, if you had to guess, what it cost to build this company, what the outlay was?
Oh goodness. Oh, I don't know that I can't have a good concept of that. I
I, uh, I,
I
th-
would just be spouting nonsense. I don't know.
yeah. Well, I mentioned this to Nick the other day, and I truly believe I worked for BlackBerry, right? And that company will
Yeah.
be a case study discussion in business schools until the end of time, because of the rapid growth and the rapid decline, the silly CEO structure. They have two CEOs, all kinds
Yeah.
of shit.
Yeah.
We somehow managed to build this company for $500,000.
Wow.
$500,000.
That's ridiculous.
It's not actually a fair indication, because that includes the person running it working for free for probably 4 years.
Oh, yeah.
But we are a hodgepodge team of
Mm.
part-timers that put in as much effort as we can to get as much work as possible done as quickly as
Yeah.
possible to the highest degree of quality. And it's an interesting point that you said about constraints, because those constraints, although they took years off my life, did help us produce some pretty phenomenal work.
Like, yeah.
Man, I wish we had more money along the way, because I had to make difficult
I'll bet.
decisions, and furlough people in some
Hmm.
situations. COVID was frightening in a number of ways, not because of the virus, because of the
Hmm.
government's response. Um, but yeah, man, here we
Yes.
are. Here we are. We got it done, and we are flying by the seat of our pants in the sense that we don't necessarily know what the tactics are, but we know what our objective is. We know what the strategy is. And
Hmm.
as far as figuring out how to get the strategy accomplished to achieve the objective, that's where the fun, energetic part comes in. And we've got just on this marketing team that you're a part of now, we essentially built an
Hmm.
internal agency because we couldn't hire anyone that was worth a shit. Nor could any
Right.
marketing agency truly do this thing justice better than we can. So we just kind of hired an
Yeah.
internal agency, and here we are. And we're on that weekly call that you've been a part of a couple of times, and we're talking about telling great stories and spreading the message
Yeah.
through our different offline and online channels. And
Yeah.
it's a hell
But
of a lot of
everybody
fun.
who's involved is up to here
Yeah,
in what is great about this,
yeah,
and that makes fantastic difference.
hell yeah, yeah. It's been good fun. I really like my job. When I was trying to do
I bet you
stuff like
do.
this and also running the company, I actually despised my job, and I was pretty thoroughly burnt out. And I was operating just purely on a desire to not fail, but it was not fun. Very
Hmm.
unsatisfying work, just constantly dealing with problems
Yeah.
and big programs I've wanted to roll out. There just wasn't enough time or resources to get it done. So the fact that Luke runs the show now, and I can focus on
Hmm.
bringing new products and services to market and communicating our
Hmm.
message more effectively, I think is great for everybody, but especially my sanity. Um,
That's awesome. I
yeah.
mean, that is one, I think, I don't know if it's an American dream, but one dream that I think a lot of folks has is to invent their own job,
Yep.
the thing that they love, and you've done it and you're doing it. And obviously other folks who are with you are doing that as well. So, uh, and I'm enjoying the heck out of, what I get to do with you. So
Hand selecting
it's
a
fun
team
times.
and hand selecting what the team works on and hand selecting a boss in my case, because I do treat Luke like he's my boss. He's my client.
Yeah.
I'm his vendor.
Good deal.
And hand
Hmm.
selecting your business partners and then deciding how your
Hmm.
day flows and deciding what's important, deciding what you work on. That's freedom. I don't make nearly, I make as much money now as I made when I was 21 years old, not adjusted for inflation. So this is not
Okay.
the thing. This is not the BlackBerry job where I was
Yeah.
making 40 grand a month, but I'm more
Yeah.
free than I was when I was making $500,000 a year, which is interesting. Um, and if we are not greedy and we're patient, the money will come. And no one really
Right.
is motivated by wanting a private plane at this company. We're motivated by
Right.
doing things that we're proud of. And yeah, it would be
Hmm.
nice to be able to live a good lifestyle, not have to have too many worries about cash as a result of the value that we provide, which I believe if we're
Hmm.
patient will come in 3, 5+ years.
Right. That takes tremendous courage. I mean, ridiculous courage, especially when you're starting a family. To decide that you're going to, number one, give that whole, what you just described, give that whole thing a go, and then to make those decisions. You were talking about deciding, what you're going to work on, what you're going to put out, who you're going to hire, you hired your own boss. That takes, again, tremendous courage, and to keep it going, and to delay the full satisfaction. Obviously, I think you and everyone involved is deriving a great deal of satisfaction from this, but to have an understanding that you're growing your own garden and there is going to be a harvest.
Yep.
That's
And
that's fantastic, and anyone would want to do that.
yeah, one of the really interesting things about this is that our job, the purpose of this business, is to enable other people to do the same. So we get to take a
Yeah,
guy who's been in corporate
yeah,
land and is just having daydreams about a noose because he can't take the DEI social justice training he just had to go through for the third
yeah.
time, and the TPS reports his boss just came around and talked to him about in his cubicle, and the changing work from home policies and COVID
Ooh,
policies, and working without a mission or a purpose, just working to earn a buck. And you get to take someone like
yeah,
this and help them take a massive bet, because in some cases these franchise owners are really betting the house, like literally putting their house on the line to open these
Mm,
gyms,
yeah.
and then guide them through the process in as low of a risk way as possible. By no means am I suggesting it's low risk. Entrepreneurship is high risk. But franchising, if you get with the right franchise company, the whole purpose is to reduce the risk, because the
Hmm.
hypotheses have already been proven. That's the idea. So the fact that we get to enable other people to live better lives, not just because of what we offer, our service, but because
Hmm.
they can become their own boss, they can hire their own team, they can define their own work schedule, and they can fail or succeed based on their own level of commitment and output. That's extraordinarily satisfying too. And then the people in our gyms
Sure.
are a lot of people that are of that archetype already, that have put in hard work their whole lives, and that's why they can afford our expensive membership. It's not cheap to train at one of our gyms, as you know.
Right.
So then what you get at the end of that is just a group of people, an extended group of people that is really like an extended family with common values, purpose,
Hmm.
and common results that we all understand and appreciate and applaud each other for. So
Hmm.
it's a really special thing that we have here, and some people call us a
Yeah.
cult, and that's fine. You know, you can
It's
use
a
whatever
community.
derogatory term you
What,
like, but we're having a good time, so
well,
fuck you.
what you described there is a community.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, So Andy, I wanted to ask you. We're going longer. Damn, there's so much more I wanted to talk to you about. And we got carried away, but I'm glad we did, because I enjoyed the topics we covered. But
Yeah,
what
me too.
why don't we end on one last topic? Tell me when you decided to get an SSC, and what you did from there and what it was like.
Oh, yeah. So, as, as I described, I was making good progress. Lifts are going up. I'm putting on body weight. Um, and I'm liking the results. I'm putting on body weight, but I'm not getting fat. I'm like starting to the whole body composition is just changing, and everything's going good. But I ran out my linear novice progression, and I didn't quite know what to do. And so, referring back to the barbell prescription, I'm looking at programming or whatever, and I'm trying to do this on my own because I'm working out here at my own in my garage. Um, and settled on the Texas method. Even though a lot of folks said, even in the book says, this is really hard for, someone who's in their 50s or 60s or whatever. But I took it up and started doing that and was continued to make progress. And then the intensity started making recovery a bit of a problem. So I started modifying the number of sets or yeah, the number of sets, and I eliminated a squat day and whatever. And so pretty soon I was doing, you know, Mick, Joe's ridiculous made up workout. And it's like
And it
it
was
occurred to me, I
experimental,
have no idea.
because you didn't have the basis of knowledge to understand whether or not that would be effective, right?
Right. Because I mean, I'm doing what I thought was, the smart thing to do. I'm paying attention to the videos and I'm reading, the books and I'm reading the articles and I'm getting good nuggets out of that. But it's still not allowing me to know with any sort of, authority that when I make this change, this is what I can expect. I had no idea. And so I got to the point where, this is serious. This is an important part of my life. I don't want to mess this up. I sure don't, at my age, I don't want to start, injuring myself. I need a pro to help me with this. And
Mm.
so I, because of how my life is structured, going to a gym 3 days a week was gonna be really tough for me. I'm busy. I got a lot of things going on, but I have this time in the early wee hours of the morning where I can do anything. And I chose to lift 3 days a week.
Mm.
And so the online coaching seemed like a really good thing to try. And so when I made the leap and got in touch, was it Rebecca maybe?
Skinner, yeah.
Had a conversation. Yeah, Rebecca Skinner had a conversation, which was awesome. And again, I like how you did that. Like, what are your goals? What are your fears? What are you trying to do? You're asking the right questions, just like in form on an online form. And then there was the actual conversation, which got a lot more detailed. And in fact, when I sent in my form, I said I'd been watching your podcast, and I said, I think I would like to have Ray Gillenwater be my coach.
Oh, that
In
was
fact, I
you.
might insist on
I
that.
remember this. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, do
Yeah,
you?
yeah. Rebecca hit me
And the
up.
reason, and the reason for that was because you had mentioned that you'd had some shoulder problems or whatever, and
Yeah.
you'd find your ways to work through that or whatever. It's like, yeah, he gets me because I had I destroyed my right rotator cuff, and I'm not going to have surgery on it, and so I'm having to feel my way through that. I thought you would be the best guy for that. Anyway, and she said, Ray's not taking on any clients, but we're going to find you somebody, that is going to be great. And I was like, yeah, sure, fine. Because again, being an SSC, as I've come to learn, again, consuming as much content as I can, that's a consequential thing.
Hmm.
There is a lot that goes into it, and every one of you guys and girls are fantastic at what you do.
Hmm.
And you're continually training, you're continually learning, exploring, what it is you need to learn because you guys work with everybody from, I think I've heard kids as young as 10 and people, beyond 90.
97,
And
98. Yeah.
every one of those, yeah. And so every one of those age groups has own little picadillos that, you kind of got to bring to it. And you got to know, you have to be authoritative to that. So again, I was fine with it. I got a fantastic coach. I'm glad that you brought this up because I wanted to mention my coach, Michael Jones.
Mm. He was on the podcast.
And
We'll link to that episode.
oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. So that has been a great relationship and a great process. And of course, because I wasn't, technically perfect on everything, we kind of had to circle back and rebuild a foundation there, and that has been fun. And frustrating, but in the way that's like, dang it, is the squat still not right? What
Never
are you
is.
doing?
It's impossible. No such thing.
Exactly. So, but everything's getting dialed in, and the weight is going back up. Everything's going in the right direction. And
Nice.
I've come across some little back tweaks and whatever, and plowed right through that.
Mm-hmm.
Michael being there to remind me, okay, yeah, I know you hurt, but you're not injured.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put the weight on the bar and let's continue. Okay, and it works.
Good job, Michael.
So,
Hell yeah. Um, I'm glad you shared that story, Michael. I'm a big fan of that guy. I didn't know him well at all. Then I had that conversation with him. Like, holy shit, you are such a perfect fit for this job. And
yeah, he's awesome.
To end the podcast and to end the thought that I was sharing earlier about just kind of the big picture and the people and the incentives and what we're trying to build here, the coach part of it is actually the most important part, because the coaches are the ones delivering the service. Some businesses argue that their customers, their members, are the most important part. It's actually not. It's the people that are interfacing with those people.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could argue that they are, but the only way that you make them as happy and fulfilled as you want them to be is via the interface, which are the people that your business or businesses employ. And so prior to the franchise company, there was not a gym that an SSC could go to where they had a job opportunity. There was no job for an SSC at a gym.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean for people that want to just do starting strength and don't want to do sales and don't want to work at 24 Hour Fitness and don't want to have to argue to try to get people to do it their way? And instead of trying to convince people that starting strength is the answer, people are coming to them wanting starting strength so they can just hone their craft. They can just do the thing that they know is the most effective, and they can just focus their productive time on doing that. I mean, that's like, you come from the design world, you dealt with engineers and things. Imagine if there was a particular domain of design, let's call it UX design, and there were no UX design. Yeah, there were no. And by the way, thanks for the compliments about your experience with us from a UX designer. That means a lot. But imagine if if you were a UX designer, that's all you wanted to do, and there were no jobs for UX design. And so if you wanted to be a UX designer, you had to start your own consultancy, or you had to wedge yourself into some other product or design job and then try to do as much UX design as you possibly could. That was the state of affairs for people that wanted to coach starting strength for a living before the franchise company. So I mean, I don't even know how many jobs we've created and how many people we've helped in that sense. But every time I talk to a coach on the podcast, I feel a tremendous sense of, it sounds like an odd word, but almost like peace. Like man,
Well,
it's
yeah.
very settling and satisfying to know that we've helped people pursue what they want to do for a living. I could talk to you all day, and I love talking to you, by the way. So thanks for coming on the show. Every time we have a conversation, I'm
Right back at
energized
you.
and fired up. So thank you, man. And
Yeah, thank you.
if you leave this episode thinking, "Damn, there's a bunch of other stuff I wanted to mention," then let's schedule another one because I enjoyed this very much.
Well, then let's do it. Sure.
Hell yeah,
I think there's 5 or 6 topics that we could just, wax poetic on. So yeah.
indeed. And for those of you that are gun fans, Andy, you should look up Andy. He's a gun aficionado and likes his shooting. So yeah, Andy, we'll leave it there, man. Thanks again for your time, and make sure you send Bree some footage from your home garage and home garage gym and putting up PRs and any design or copy related stuff you're doing for us that you want to highlight.
Yeah, we'll do.
All right, thanks, man.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
It's been great.